Welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast for film fans by film fans. Every episode we look at films old and new to choose what should be preserved for all time in our movie vault. With lively topics, big questions and crazy challenges to entertain us and our guests, we always look to have fun by giving you the topics worth discussing and the movies worth watching. Even if there are some duds along the way. But don't just take my word for it. Here's a preview of what to expect in today's episode. Oh god, no. Oh god. Don't envy me, guys. Why? I've got Mega Shark versus Mecca Shark. From 2014. It's rated 2.8 or 2.6 on IMDb. Jesus Christ.
I'll trade you for the Ring versus the Grudge.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Are you not entertained? I am your father. Great Scott! Here's Johnny. I'll be back.
It's not the car, it's a silly movie boy.
Well, good movies.
Hello and welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast that gives you the topics worth discussing and the movies worth watching. I am your host, David Oscar, and I am joined as ever by my co-host. He is our referee of chaos, just waiting to say, let them fight. It's Craig McDonald.
You what, mate?
I was going to do a red corner, blue corner sort of situation, but...
Oh, what? You're afraid to fight me? Bring it. Bring it.
Craig doesn't want to go with boxing analogies. He's just going with the thug life.
No, I just want to beat up David. I think it's been a long time coming at this point. Let's just get the aggression out of the way now. Just
yeah, when people see versus in the title, they're like, oh, finally. And they're like, oh, damn.
We're either going to fight or it's one of the two.
Oh, God. So, Craig, we are coming off the Endgame special just last week. How are you feeling after that?
It was a wild ride. I'd like to thank everyone for the beautiful presents they got me. And obviously, congratulations to insert name of winner here. Excellent team. I love their team name of insert funny team name here.
I'm not editing that. It's like that Poochie scene in The Simpsons. It's like, I have to go now. My planet needs me. Craig slides away. Joining us for the chaos today is two previous guests and good friends of ours. The first is a filmmaker and writer. He is the king of hot takes over on Fresh Take and Twitter. It is Niall Glynn. Hello, Niall.
Hello. I didn't know I was a hot taker. I didn't know that was my new title.
You were writing about cats and your love of that cinema experience. How can you not be?
Yeah, I suppose I did write about that, and then I was kind of rude about WandaVision. So the kids don't like me.
And coming off The Mandalorian as well. It was just like, I was just reading it
geez.
I was like...
I've burned bridges, dude.
Yeah, that was the hot take I knew from it. I've just been sat here like, God damn it.
Well, let's get it all out. This is a fighting special.
Yeah, exactly. Good to have you on again, Niall. And joining us as well is our favourite history buff and lover of all things strange and macabre. It is Dai Hill. Hello, Dai.
Hello. I was on mute for a second there.
So, Dai, how have you been? Like I said before, it feels like several eons and lockdowns ago that we spoke.
It feels like forever. I'm very well. I saw The Dig, the movie, the other week, which, as an archaeologist, it's all right. Well, quite good. Disappointing that they cut out
The Dig.
Well, the reason they want to dig in a specific hill is in the movie. She says, "Oh, I've just got a feeling about it. I think this one's going to be where to go." In reality, she wanted them to dig on that hill because it's where she'd seen a ghost horse.
Oh.
And was like, I saw a ghost there, dig it. And that's how they discovered the Sutton Hoo burial.
So they left out the more interesting element of...
I think they didn't want it to look like she's insane.
It's not like that horse, that white horse is painted into the grass. It's not like that, is it? It's like, we should dig this. Like, what makes you say that?
There's a horse.
Yeah.
I think we should dig over there. What makes you say that? There's a giant red X.
Yeah,
I think that could be it.
Lots of interesting topics today anyway, guys. But we have, more pressing matters to talk about today in terms of the mysteries of who's going to win in certain situations. So, shall we hear what's coming up in today's episode, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
In this week's episode, we are talking about versus movies. So that's films that have versus or V in the title. So we thought it'd be fun if we picked a bunch of versus movies out of a hat to see what films we get for us all to talk about. But first of all, we wanted to talk about what our thoughts are on the genre as a whole and the idea of pitting two characters against each other, especially when it comes to kaiju films. So, what does Niall think about kaiju films and Godzilla?
Yeah, I love the first Godzilla as like a movie with actual like themes and drama. It's Godzilla's not really an entity in it so much as a symbol, which I like. It's very much about the humans. But then I also do love the later films where it's just two men in rubbish suits throwing cardboard rocks at each other. They have their own unique charms, and even in the original Godzilla vs. Kong, it's like actually quite disinterested in that fight for whatever reason. It only comes into the actual plot in the last 15 minutes of a 90-minute movie. And now I feel like the advertising for this new one is like, yeah, they're finally going to do it. And I was like, oh, I've seen this. And it was, again, like Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik. It was 10 minutes long.
Yeah. And then there's the whole idea of like, oh, they're going to have to combine together to fight off something. You know, they'll unite at the end and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's going to be
some rubbish draw. I don't know. Maybe they'll kiss. That'd be unique.
I did love your Twitter video that like Kong jumping off the boat and you edited it to the Ratatouille trailer. That was amazing. Go check that out, guys. It's
follow me on Twitter, listeners. At Niall the Glen.
Dai, what is your feeling on this? Like I said, when I mentioned it to you, obviously, like you said, you thought of like films which are more, you know, Kramer versus Kramer, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. You know, what do you think of when you think of like versus movies? Do you think it's an actual genre itself, or is it just a kind of marketing tool?
Well, I mean, as you're talking about it now, because from our historical perspective, it kind of goes back. You go way back. The Iliad is basically a versus story. Because that's Achilles versus Hector, and the whole thing is this one build up to this one mega fight between these two guys. And a lot of like medieval literature, basically, you know, the Arthurian stuff, a lot of that comes down to sort of, you have these knights who are like, you know, they set up and then they just make them fight. Yeah. So like Lancelot and Gawain, like there's a big fight at the end where it's like, you know, a whole thing has been building up. So that instinct to be like, there's this guy's cool, this guy's also really cool, let's make them fight, is kind of the stupidest, oldest instinct we have as storytellers. Is to just get like two action figures and bash them against each other. But I think the Iliad might have been a bit better than Kong versus Godzilla. But in terms of modern ones, I've never seen a versus movie, so I'm very excited to discover how good / dreadful they may or may not be.
Yeah, exactly. That's the interesting thing about them is, and especially because you've been on the podcast before talking about horror, it's very much, again, of that time of people in weird suits and, you know, the theatrics of everything. We have different levels of experience with these kind of films, but we thought it'd be fun if we watched through some and saw, you know, how well they stand up. Do they, you know, make for a good versus movie? And we thought the best way to do that with so many of them out there is just, you know, luck of the draw. So we're going to pick some films from a cup. And it's going to do a random draw for each person. You get 2 films each. And then it's up to you which film you talk about from those 2 films. And how are we all feeling?
Very excited.
I just think you're going to rig this system to benefit you, David.
It's a random draw. How can I well, apart from if I have just like they're all the same or something.
You have to hold up the cup and show us the answer.
So in here is a mix of, you know, like say kaiju films, of like Japanese typical versus, you know, monster films. Most of them, I think from what I've seen, are all pretty much available for like rental, streaming. And, you know, there's a different mix of some horror stuff, some sci-fi, some of the trashy kind of stuff. So we'll see what comes out. Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Yeah, okay. Right. So, Niall, your first one. So, your first film. Okay. You have Gamera versus Gaios from 1967.
I don't know how I'm going to write that down. Oh, Gamera is like the big turtle, isn't it?
Yeah, the flying turtle, which like breathes fire.
Oh, you know what? I'm very happy with that.
Right, and let's go for Craig, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
So, Craig, you have... I was like, I knew Craig was going to get this one. I was like, should I leave this in? I was like, no, I'm going to leave it in because Craig might have it. So, I'll say the original name first.
Oh, dear, no.
Sadako versus Kayako, which is basically The Ring versus The Grudge, which is a Japanese horror film.
You prick.
How will those two things fight? I'm really curious. I really want to hear back on this one.
Yeah, it's like just two like creepy ghost girls basically fighting
just
it out.
imagining the Grudge pushing the TV over while the ring's trying to come out.
All I can say is I swear to God the other one better be good because like I do not want to choose between two bad options. Especially if it means I have to watch I hate horror.
Right, so I'll go for Dai. Oh, it's a long one. So, this you have Godzilla versus Mega Gaios, I think it's said, which is from 2000. So it's one of the newer Japanese kaiju films. In Japanese, it's Gojira Tai Maga Girasu Ji Shometsu Sakusen. And America just went, nah, screw that, Godzilla, this is Mega Gaios. So, yeah, from the year 2000.
It must be good then.
Right, let's see what I get. Should be interesting.
He's going to get like Elmo versus Big Bird now.
Oh, God, no. Oh, God. Don't envy me, guys. Why? I've got Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. From 2014. It's rated 2.8 or 2.6 on IMDb. Jesus Christ.
I'll trade you for The Ring versus the Grudge.
Oh, I was like, I'll put this in there. That poor soul will get it. It was me, of course. Let's just go for our second draw now. So go for Niall. Your second film is... Oh, sticking to the theme. You have Godzilla versus Space Godzilla.
What?
Was that like his cousin?
He has a son as well, actually. That's a fun one. But in Japanese, it's Gojira versus Super Su Gojira. So, you know.
Oh, what year is that from?
That is from 1994. So you got some nice different eras by there. The 60s and the 90s. Right. Craig's second one. Let's see if he can redeem himself. So, Craig... Oh, okay. So, Craig, you have King Kong versus Godzilla.
Oh, the original.
Yeah, 1963. So, Kingu Kongu Tai Gojira.
Gee, I wonder which of the two films I'm going to talk about.
Right, and Dai, what is your second? Oh, I'm psychic. I was like, he's had like a kaiju, and I was like, I wonder if he's going to get this, and you did. You've got Freddy versus Jason.
Oh.
That is a good time movie for me. I love that movie.
So you could stick to horror, or you could...
I wouldn't call it horror.
It was one of the ones I was secretly hoping to have, but oh well.
You had the Japanese equivalent.
Which is 100 times worse, right?
I've never seen any of the Freddy Krueger movies. So is this a good introduction to the character of Freddy Krueger for me? Or am I going to be completely baffled?
I don't think you'll be baffled, but I think it's probably like the stupidest one.
No.
Actually, I'd need to watch them again to decide that. But it's a lot of fun. It's Robert Englund really vamping it up. You can't go wrong.
Right, and let's see what the final one is for myself. Hopefully I can redeem myself from the shark film. Okay, I have a Godzilla one. So it is from 1995, and it's Godzilla versus Destroyer. Godzilla versus Destructoria in Japanese. So, yeah, we look forward to hearing all of your thoughts, guys, as we pit these films against each other and see if they live up to the versus, tropes and legacy. And, yeah, we'll see what we all think in a matter of seconds. Hello, welcome back. So what has been just a few seconds for those at home has been days for us and our guests as we have gone off and checked out all our versus movies. So let's get down to business, guys. In the red corner, we have the Barn Breaker. He's been fighting with some pigs already during the day. It's Craig McDonald. Craig, which film have you chosen to go with after the draw?
So I had a wonderful choice of the original King Kong versus Godzilla, or a film I thought I would never watch in my life, which was Sadako versus Kayako, also known as, as we would call it, the creatures from The Ring and the Grudge fight. The film that I chose was Sadako versus Kayako.
Should be interesting going into the world of horror there. So we also have the Irish Tyrant. Will he have the luck of the Irish today? It's a subtle burn there. Niall, which film did you choose for your versus movie?
I was born in Newport. I just love how the Irish part. All right.
Hey, you give me grief about that Disney Channel movie, okay?
that's very true. So I went with Gamera versus Gaios.
Awesome. So we're going to have some Godzilla light action in there with Gamera. And we also have in the lilac corner, all chilled and zen, just like, as I called him before this episode, Moonwind from Disney's Soul. We have Dai Hill. Dai, what did you go with?
I went with less chilled Godzilla versus Megaguirus. Or Megagirus, the most confusingly named film.
So we're getting the good old Godzilla. He's making an appearance in a very, very kaiju, very Japanese sort of movie. Can't wait to hear your opinions on that one. And yes, for myself, I don't even think I mentioned a color for. So Niall, you can have the green corner, of course. I'll be in the yellow corner, and I went for the, of course, shark movie, which is Mega Shark versus Mecca Shark, which I chose over my Godzilla film, which was so Godzilla versus Destroyer. I went for Mega Shark versus Mecca Shark. Right, so, we'll see how today's episode goes in terms of our versus movies, how they all pan out. So, first of all, we are going to go over to, of course, the classic kaiju movies, where it all stemmed from in Japan, with Dai, who's going to talk about Godzilla versus Megaguirus. Dai, how did you find your film?
It was boring.
Oh.
For a monster that's sort of known for either being this great figure of terror or this grand sort of camp spectacular, this movie it kind of seemed to be trying to take itself seriously and just failed. It kind of tried to be a genuine, like, serious, this is a scary monster thing, but then also play up with the sort of, this is a versus movie with big monsters punching each other, and it kind of failed at all of it. So I feel as though in the whole canon of Godzilla movies, we probably managed to pick the worst one.
Oh dear.
And this was the dub you said that you watched. Was it in English, like an American sort of dub, or was it?
Yeah, it was dubbed in English, which is, was fine and well done. It has really very little plot to speak of. And what plot it does have, by the end it turns out made no sense at all. The plot is that that Godzilla's just sort of out and about. And so they've got a team together who want to make a weapon that can kill him. And so they've come up with it's a satellite that fires a black hole and traps him in a black hole, which sounds amazing, but is very, very boring. A little test of the black hole sends creates a wormhole that nobody notices, and through it comes a tiny dragonfly monster, and that gradually turns into Mega Gyrus. But then they do the black hole thing later, and no more monsters come through. So why the monster came through that one time makes no sense. And is the plot meant to be sort of, you know how the original Godzilla is that he's a big metaphor for the horrors of nuclear devastation and things. So you think, oh, this movie, maybe this is going to be a metaphor for like the idea that they've gone too far in creating a weapon. You know, they've created a weapon, and there's a moment in it that looks almost like they fired their own nuclear bomb and destroyed their own town, sort of thing. And it's nearly kind of compelling and striking, this idea that they've, you know, created this black hole weapon that's worse than anything that Godzilla could have done. But that's not the plot. And at the end, they use it and it saves the day, and they trap Godzilla in a black hole.
Oh.
The whole thing is focused on this weapon that is kind of irrelevant to the plot, because then the plot is really that Godzilla and this giant dragonfly are just gradually building up to a fight, really for no reason whatsoever. They just turn up and have a punch up. But that is the best part of the movie. So as we go into how fun it is seeing giant monsters fighting, like having Godzilla just get like punched in the face by a giant dragonfly is weirdly amazing.
That's what I was interested in with this one, because this is like 2000, isn't it? So like you said, whereas the original Godzilla is about, like you said, metaphors for nuclear warfare, etc. I know that throughout all of these films, where I've been looking into it recently, because I've gone back to the old movies, they always want these kaiju films to be about something or some metaphor for something. And so, for example, I think there was one, I can't remember the exact name of it now, but there's one which is kind of like a gas kind of monster, and that's like, they were like, oh yeah, Japan has got a pollution problem at the moment, so that was meant to reflect that. So, like you said, maybe they did try to reflect something, but like you said, it just didn't amount to much, or...
Yeah, I mean, basically, there's no real human characters in this movie. They're all just arbitrarily turning up and joining up with this gang to make a black hole. So there's no, and even when the monsters do fight, you feel like it would be improved if the characters were somehow engaged with the fight, if they're like hiding or commenting on it or something. Or say, you know, they need to escape in time, so Godzilla's like, you know, protecting them or anything. But as it is, it's just completely silent. It's just music and these two things punching each other. And so, yeah, it doesn't have that kind of, well, one, the plot, as I say, is completely irrelevant and makes no sense. And there's no human story. There's no case of a character trying to like develop or achieve anything. It's just, which means the whole thing ends up, you've got sort of, you know, an hour of build up of seeing these monsters and what they're going on about. And there's a few like smart scenes and things where you see all these dragonflies, and someone climbs on Godzilla at one point, which is quite fun. But it's all irrelevant and just building up to them punching each other, which is amazing. Having Godzilla like bite off the stinger of a giant dragonfly is awesome. But the surrounding that is just nothing at all.
It's weird as well, because why I was interested with that era, again, like I've been going through it, and, you know, only in like the beginning, because they've got all these different eras of, you know, the Godzilla sort of franchise. And obviously when you get to the stage at which you're at, where especially during the 90s, etc., it was kind of like Space Godzilla and Mega Gyrus, and like I got given as well, like Destroyer and all these like crazy creatures. And especially now in the newer Godzilla films, they don't so much treat him as a villain. It's kind of like they're just reacting to his presence, and then he goes up against some other animal. So I was wondering if it was the same here, in that it's like he's been around for so long, and if they go in with the canon of like, yeah, he's been in like 6-7 films before this, is it that they're like, yeah, you know, Godzilla's our friend, Godzilla's here, but then like you said, they're trying to trap him in a black hole, so obviously that's not the case. So it's just kind of hilarious that after like 7-8 films, they would still be like, we're still trying to deal with Godzilla, we're still here trying to like stop him.
Especially after killing him in the first film.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive it became a series.
That's what I thought when I did watch Godzilla Raids again. I was just like, I'm really interested to see how he comes back from his skeleton. And there's just literally just that scene where they're like, is this the same Godzilla? No, it's another one. Oh, okay. That's just that over with then. Just literally, there's just a scene where the scientist just goes, we knew another Godzilla would appear again. And they're like, oh, okay.
That's some Palpatine stuff.
Hang on,
Yeah.
Godzilla as a species?
Yeah, exactly. I was
the
just like,
hell?
what? Okay.
Well, that seems to happen at the end of this one, because they do successfully trap Godzilla in a black hole. But then there's this little like bit stuck on the end where someone's like, there's also some strange seismic activity under the ocean. Probably Godzilla again. You're like, why did you do this whole black hole thing if he's just going to come back again?
Is he just like Kenny from South Park? You'll kill him, but he just randomly turns up ready for the next film and nobody knows how you explain it.
Yeah, or it's a rubbish black hole. You know, they're just bad at making black holes.
When you were describing the plot, Di, I thought they would learn that trying to trap Godzilla in the black hole was a mistake because the creature they let in to the universe, you know, Godzilla had to defeat. But it just seems like they really have it out for poor Godzilla. Like, he can't win.
Yeah, exactly. It's so stupid that, yeah, the weapon to beat Godzilla is what brings the main monster in. But the heroes never realized that, because there was a tiny boy who snuck into the military test of the mini black hole and nobody noticed. And then he kind of snuck back later and stole the egg from this giant dragonfly that came through and then put it in the sewers in Tokyo. So no one noticed. So you see, that explains everything. Everything makes sense now.
Maybe it's meant to be a satire of the prison system, how it doesn't really work. I don't know.
It's either that or just a grand message of just, yet again, kids are ruining the world.
There does seem to be a theme of children just running around in these disaster films and kaiju films, etc. Where you're like, what are you doing there? And especially in my film, there's just an hilarious, like, bad example of this. But
just wait till you get to my series.
Oh, God.
Oh, hell.
But, yeah, and weirdly, when I've just searched up the film, it actually says Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, despite featuring the same Godzilla suit that was used in its immediate predecessor, Godzilla 2000, the film ignores the events of the previous installment as well as every other entry in the franchise apart from the original 1954 film Godzilla.
Yeah, it starts with a really long-winded narration that explains the plot of the first movie. And then another one, I think. I'm not sure what it's talking about the second one. It says that they say that Godzilla turned up to get nuclear power first. And then they tried plasma power and he came back again to get that. So now they've banned both. So the plot doesn't actually revolve around nuclear power. It revolves around that at the very end, it turns out these scientists had a secret test to do plasma power.
Right.
I wasn't sure if there's like two movies they've referenced or if they've just invented this completely unnecessary plasma thing in the middle that has no relevance. So I don't really question why he's coming back either. Not until the very end, when after he's beaten Megaguirus, he then waddles off and then starts smashing up like a science lab. And they're like, oh, there's secretly a plasma in there. Oh, bloody hell, scientists.
Poor Godzilla's just the world's biggest junkie. He just wanders everywhere trying to get his fix.
Basically, yeah.
They've got this like giant creature that's just walking around and like they put him in a black hole, and maybe it's just because I've recently, WandaVision's on and everything like that, but we were saying before that the creature came through the black hole, so that already is like a sign of like bad things are on the other side. But I just imagining like Godzilla there, like Monica Rambeau, just like through this black hole and being duplicated into more Godzillas or something like that. Like, I was like, is it like the 2009 Star Trek where like a new generation of Godzillas are going to come out on the other side or something?
I couldn't help but imagine like a Planet Hulk kind of situation where he becomes king of an alien planet, you know? That'd be a cool movie. Maybe it's happened.
Yeah, where did Godzilla go? Just seeing just his rubber body like just floating into some dimension somewhere.
I just like Niall's idea of like a Planet Hulk thing, because I'm pretty sure somebody would call it God of the Zillas.
And lastly, Dai, what did you think of the then versus aspect of it? Was it just two people in a bunch of rubber suits? Has it evolved since 1954 into 2000?
Well, you know what? That's the best part of the movie, is when they're fighting, because that's the part where there's almost a plot. There's kind of cause and effect and character stuff going on, because it's, throughout the setup, they've been setting up what Megaguirus can kind of do. So it can kind of flap its wings really quickly, and it's got a stinger in it, and it sort of sucks nuclear power as well. So he kind of stabs Godzilla and sucks all of his energy out. So he's all, tired and sad, because in the way that you can do that with, cause and effect, with the idea of, Megavirus is too quick for Godzilla. So he goes, "Oh, I can't catch you." And then he sort of, by the end, he kind of figures it out and tricks him and gets it, sort of thing. And so it worked as a mini plot in its own right, which is actually really fun. Seeing the characters going through it and stuff, and then having Godzilla win at the end. So that's the most fun part of the movie. It's just that the rest of the movie has no real relationship to that central fight.
Solid hit, we've got him scrambling now.
He is moving fast. To form position.
I'm right on top of him, acquiring target.
We'll go on to my choice there next, which is encompassing the fantastic world of shark movies. So we go from Japan over to Australia, even though the US Navy is heavily involved in this. Obviously, it's one of those films which has, quite a heavy sort of New Zealand, Australian cast. It's obviously a part of that big franchise of different shark movies. This one specifically is more Mega Shark versus something. So they have, I think, about 4 or 5 movies, and it's against Mega Shark versus like Colossus, which is basically just a giant robot. I think there's like Crocosaurus, giant squid, all that kind of stuff. But this one is Mega Shark versus Mecca Shark, which should actually be called Mecca Sharks, because there is 2. But yeah, this was such a bizarre and ludicrous film, but you kind of don't expect anything other than that, especially just from looking at the poster or trailers. It's exactly what is on the tin, and it's kind of hard film to rate in a way or judge, because it just is what it is. It's kind of one of those just, TV movies, direct to DVD, kind of just, they're like, we know this is dumb and we know it's stupid and that's what this is all about. And you're just like, yeah, okay, as long as you're on board with that. I think there is obviously the enjoyment factor out of the whole, this is low budget, this is like incredibly stupid and campy. And that works for like a lot of it, bizarrely, but then there's other parts. I can't say that there's any like glaring plot holes or like lack of character development, because they do make some effort in some places, which is better than some Hollywood movies. It's like watching like a bad student film in some essences, where you're watching something and you're like, oh, that's funny. You can see what that is. You can see that they didn't film this in the ocean. It's clearly in a swimming pool and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's very much just kind of, you're along for the ride of just how bad it is. But, the performances and stuff aren't actually that bad. If you haven't guessed already, the Mega Shark is a megalodon. So I'm kind of seeing this as maybe inspiration for the Meg, maybe.
That isn't the selling point for me.
But
I just find it interesting how with these Godzilla films now, we're getting Godzilla versus Kong and King of the Monsters. They're like drawing from these kind of really cheap, funny rubber suit films. And it's kind of the same with this. If the Meg was to spawn into a franchise and they were to bring out Meg versus Mecha Meg, then everyone would be like, oh yeah, that was in Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. It's, you probably have a bunch of theory videos about it and, where did this come from, like you do with Marvel and all that kind of stuff. It's just the way there's, like, throughout the film, it's like filled with loads of stock footage of like Sydney and, bridges and like bays and like boats going in and out of bays, and it'll literally be a point in which they're like chasing the shark in their submarines and they're like, he's on his way to somewhere else, and then it'll just jump to like a stock footage of just like a city moving fast and then just go back to them for like no reason. It's just as if they were like, we needed something to splice this up a bit. Oh, we'll just put in some stock footage of like an Australian city. It's weird as well, like the main characters in this film. So you have Jack, who's this kind of like, shark hunter or whatever. It's him and his wife, Rosie. You can tell from maybe previous films that they're kind of like this group that's been specialized and tasked with tracking down megalodons. At the beginning of the film, The entire reason the mega shark comes into it is because a boat in, I think, Cairo is literally just dragging in a giant iceberg because of the drought, and just it breaks open and a shark comes out. And then get this, the shark hits the tugboat that brought in the iceberg all the way to Egypt, where it decapitates the Sphinx. That, no lies, that's just exactly how it happens. And then we go to like our main characters. So we have Rosie, Jack. You get the idea that they're kind of experimenting with mecha sharks. So she's in this like smaller version, which they're experimenting with. There's a really important subplot in this film, by the way. So the main plot is that they're trying to find a way to deal with all these mega sharks. But there's a really important subplot that Jack is giving up smoking. So remember that, guys. It's really important. Weirdly, Rosie pilots this like smaller mecha shark, and it's got an AI kind of like Knight Rider. I can only describe it as Knight Rider in a shark. It's literally this guy who sounds like Knight Rider. Sounds like he would say, "Oh well, I don't know, Daniel." It's like this Australian guy.
Do you mean Kit?
Kit, that's it. Yeah, I was trying to think before. I was like, what's his name? But this one is called Nero. So, but it is basically, again, the kit of mecha sharks, and it is all kind of like, oh, you know, the torpedoes are ready and all this kind of stuff. The woman who pilots it, Rosie, has one of those typical kind of just glass lit up pieces of plastic, which is all blue, which like does nothing. It's just there to kind of look sci-fi-ish. At one point, they introduced the admiral of this Navy ship who's chasing the shark, and I honestly thought his name was Admiral Eagleburn, and I'm really disappointed it wasn't, because when they introduced him, you went, oh, Admiral Eagleburn? I was like, is he called Admiral Eagleburn? But then the more people talked in the film, I was like, oh, damn it, he's called Admiral Engelberg. I was like, God damn it, why didn't you call him Eagleburn? But we're talking about nuclear waste and everything like that. This film does have, you know, a bit of a small touch of ethics in which they introduce Rosie and Jack to this like new mecha shark, which is like a much bigger version than what they've got. And he says, oh, does it use like nuclear power, or is there nuclear torpedoes in there? And he's like, no, we opted against that. And he's like, good, because I don't want any nuclear waste like dumping down into our ocean to like make things worse when this thing is going around polluting it. And like Rosie's just there like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Don't listen to Mr. Eco Warrior and everything here. And I was just like, okay, this is kind of random, but I kind of respect you putting it in there. And then we just go from there just to them chasing the shark throughout the entire film, basically. It's just like a bunch of Navy ships with Mecha Shark in tow. And just Mega Shark is just doing the most bizarre things. So he's already batted away that tugboat into the middle of Egypt. But that's just the beginning. He also goes to a oil rig in which he jumps out of the ocean. And at this point, we just see him jump out. And then we just cut to clouds. And then you just hear like a bunch of destruction. So they literally were like, we haven't got the budget for this. So they just cut to a bunch of fast moving clouds. And then you just go to a news reporter like, 15 people are now missing from the oil rig disaster of after the Megalodon has attacked. The shark attacking the oil rig is not the most bizarre thing in this film. We actually, a few times he's like body slammed essentially a few different Navy ships, and we get like hilarious footage of just people like, it really makes you respect films like the Poseidon Adventure and like 2012 for like just at least they've got the budget to do these kind of things. The tip of the iceberg, you know, pun not intended for the iceberg that showed up earlier in the film, is when literally we're like on a boat and they're like, sir, this plane is having trouble like landing somewhere. And you're like, plane? What the hell? Well, we're on the ocean. What does a plane have to do with anything? And we go inside the plane and this pilot's like, I'm going to have to land her somewhere, da-da-da-da-da. And then literally the mecha shark comes along and they're like, there's a bogey above us. Like, oh no. And the shark is like right beneath it. And you're like, what? What's going to happen? And the mega shark literally jumps out of the water to attack this plane. So the mecha shark has to jump up as well. And they literally just cross in front of this plane, in which these people are like, whoa. And this guy's like, I don't care what the flight plan says. I'm getting out of here. And I'm like, yeah, 2 giant sharks in the air. I think anybody would just go off grid and get the hell out of there. Don't obey the rules in that situation. but I just love the fact that the shark literally wanted to take down a plane. Once all of that's done, we kind of get into our finale, and this is where it's really bizarre, in which the mecha shark has, for some reason, got damaged so much that it's gone into drone mode, which means that it just does its own thing without any pilots. So even though Nero, the AI, has been integrated into this thing, the drone mode is taken over and it will do whatever it wants. And it just basically decides that it wants to attack Sydney Harbour, at which point it's just attacking the city. And then I think maybe the mega shark or something makes it damaged. It flies into the Sydney Opera House. This is where we get like the little girl stuff where she's running away. We even get like an Iron Man 2 sort of moment where the little girl like holds up her hand at the mecha shark to like communicate with her or something, I don't know. So then Jack has to come in and save this little girl from the shark eating it. It then goes into its amphibious mode where wheels come out of the mecha shark and it just starts driving around Sydney, just tearing shit up for no reason because it's on drone mode and Nero is being disabled or something. So then it turns out they need to get the mega shark to like destroy the mecha shark. So what was used originally as a weapon to stop the mega shark now needs to be stopped itself by the enemy it was originally pursuing. I'm like, okay, right? Pretty much that's it. And then we just go to like a knockoff Paramore song for the rest of the credits. And then at the end, Jack takes a smoke and his wife goes, oh, Jack. And then that's it. And like before in the film, she was like, stop smoking, Jack. You said you had given up. And even Nero was just like, Jack, are you taking a puff of a cigarette? And he's like, no. And at some point, they even link it into like the death of his child because like Rosie's also previously an alcoholic, which is even weirder then at the end of the film. They're kind of like, oh, Jack, you know, you've gone back to your vice. Like, what do you like? So,
how much do Mega Shark and Mecha Shark actually fight?
Very little. It's more just Mega Shark. It's more Mecha Shark chasing Mega Shark. It's not actually at any point do they really scuffle. It's more just she sends a torpedo at it and the mega shark flips it away. And a bunch of times they keep hitting civilian ships and she goes like, oh no, I'm responsible for the death of all those people. And the husband's just literally like, get it together, Rosie. We need to stop the shark. She's like, you're right. And then they just carry on. And I'm like, what the hell? You just killed like hundreds of people and you just shrug it off like it's nothing. And it just keeps happening like that. Throughout the film, they also keep cutting back to this expert who's just like a blonde woman. The only way I can describe it is imagine if Kayako, who's Penny in The Big Bang Theory, played a scientist in like a big action blockbuster and was just Kayako throughout the entire film. So they just have her keep ringing the Admiral, being like around like loads of like blackboards with writing and test tubes and stuff. But she's there in like this really like tight fitting black dress and like, you know, curled hair, blonde and everything. And she's like, Admiral, you want to like make sure that you do this because I've been tracking the shark. And at one point then they actually have the line, let me get this right. Oh yeah, so what you're telling me is we have a 200-foot horny shark on our hands. And she's like, yeah, you need to find him a mate. Which leads to nothing because that's what they think that the solution might be, is that the shark is horny and is going back to Sydney because apparently that's when loads of megalodons nested years and years ago. So he's going there to go find himself a female mate. And then doesn't, and then just decides to attack the mecha shark because it's also an alpha male, so he's going to attack him, which he does, and then he blows them both up.
Surely the solution, therefore, would be to make Mecha Shark into like a sexy.
I was
shark,
thinking
like, give it
that.
some lipstick
and fill it with TNT.
Yeah, I was really hoping we would get like a little pink bow, and like you said, like lipstick.
I just find it really concerning that the plan of attack is we need to get this guy laid. We can't get him laid. All right, kill him. It seems like a brutal strategy.
That's what I'm like as a wingman.
What, you get them laid or otherwise just...
Or they have to die.
Do you just have like a Japanese like honor system of just like, well, you failed. Shing.
If at first you don't succeed, then you failed. I live my life by these words.
I did enjoy that, again, they didn't use this enough. When Nero says activating eel skin, which is the mecha shark can like electrify its body. So if the mega shark attacks it gets like electrocuted. I was like, that's quite clever, but they just don't use it enough, or I kind of wanted more aquatic gadgets for this mecha shark. I kind of wanted launch octopus torpedo or something like that.
I don't think that's how technology works. I don't think you can electrify the skin of a submarine, essentially, because otherwise everything in the water is just going to be electrocuted, including you.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just one shark destroying everything, and then the robot shark destroys stuff, and then someone destroys them.
Yeah.
When what you want is for the two of them to actually fight each other. You want to see their strengths and weaknesses, then have them go at it, sort of thing. But it sounds like they never really do that.
No, it is weird. Like, I suppose because the other films maybe are like squids and octopuses, there's more reason to do that. But because from the very beginning of the film, they're kind of like, oh, we've designed this to stop this shark, they kind of corner themselves, I think, already by that moment. Because I suppose maybe even in Godzilla films, etc., even though maybe Mecha Godzilla is made as a deterrent to Godzilla, there's still usually some nefarious thing or something that happens, as somebody's like, oh, I've made this sinister robot or something. So I thought it was going to go down that line. But the fact that the heroes are using the mecha shark, then it just leads to this really arbitrary reason as to why the mecha shark needs to be evil, because it's gone into drone mode.
Like, there doesn't seem to be really any bad blood between the two characters in the title. One's just an animal and the other's a robot. Like, I don't know, it's such a boring scenario.
The mega shark doesn't even really have a personality, whereas, obviously it's a bit unfair to maybe link it to Jaws, but that is the pinnacle of shark movies, so you feel the character of Jaws throughout that. They're like, oh no, he's done this, he's done that. Whereas again, throughout this entire film, it's just kind of like some destruction has happened, but it's just like a CGI shark is just rammed into something. You don't feel like, oh, it's the mega shark. It's just some generic Shrek. That would be bizarre.
That would be a good fight.
Yeah, it's just some generic shark. So yeah, it's a bit weird on that sense. I do have to say as well, they literally jump the shark in this film. There's a point in which Rosie has gone inside the mecha shark to shut it down, and he literally grabs a dirt bike, and I love this moment because the guy who plays Jack looks terrified. He doesn't look like he wants to be on this bike. He's like, I'm coming, Rosie, and I'm like, you don't look comfortable on that bike at all, man. And he literally pops a wheelie on a car and somehow then launches himself all the way over the mecha shark, at which point he then distracts the mecha shark to follow him into the sea. So popping a wheelie somehow launched him all the way over this, 200-foot mecha shark.
They put that in on purpose, and they all thought they were really clever for having somebody literally jump the shark. And everyone on the production was like, oh yeah, this is going to be amazing. He's literally jumping the shark. We
now go on to Niall, back into the world of Kaiju with Gamera. So, Niall, remind us of the name of this one.
So the name of the film is... I don't want to use the American name because the Japanese one's even better. The Japanese title is Giant Monster Dogfight. Gamera versus Gaios. Now that is a name. So before I watched it, I'll just quickly talk about it. I watched the first film just to kind of introduce myself to Gamera, so I knew why was it important he's fighting Gaios. It's not important, but I like to know. So the original Gamera himself is pretty much a rip-off of Godzilla, who's been the cause of a few legal disputes in old Japan. He's got two nicknames, or two titles that I like. Gamera is known as Guardian of the Universe, or his creepy nickname, Friend of All Children.
Oh, yeah, I think I've seen both of those, and I was like, what?
Which does tie into the films quite a bit. I love Gamera. I find him really cute, despite the fact he has a horrible scream. He kind of screams like a human being, which it's kind of unsettling. Gamera is a giant turtle monster. He eats fire and can fly. And Gamera flying is one of the most joyous things I've seen on screen in a long time. He tucks his arms, head and tail into the shell and then out of the holes, these jets just ignite, and he starts spinning around and flies off like a UFO.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's glorious.
I was going to say he sounds a bit like Totoro, like he can fly, like the children love him, but then I don't think Totoro flies around like that. Well, he does have a spinning top, so maybe.
Hey, Gamera versus Totoro. That'd be a good movie.
That would be horrendous. My childhood.
One more thing about Gamera, just what he does. He also like flails his arms around like an idiot constantly, and I just find him extremely likable. And just a shout out, I watched both of these on Arrow's Amazon Prime channel, and the transfers they have of these old films are really beautiful. There's like great texture to them. Sorry, just had to be a bit of a nerd there.
Yeah, well, they recently released them onto like Blu-ray and stuff, which is like impressive, which is like, do that for Godzilla.
It felt like they were kind of trying to compete with Criterion's big Godzilla set, which is a fun little thing, because Gamera has never actually gotten to fight Godzilla due to Toei hating Gamera for being such a close ripoff. The closest thing the two ever came to fighting, I learned, was in 1970 at a Japanese convention. It was like some official stage show with two men in rubber suits just hitting each other. It's like, I think I tried to find a video clip, but sadly it was before handycams.
I thought you were going to say then there was at a convention where a guy was walking around as a cosplay of Godzilla, and and they just looked at each other and was like...
Dave, I certainly hope that has happened at a convention at one point.
Just some guys from Toei walking over to the Godzilla suit being like, you need to take him out.
So yeah, Gamera versus Gaios begins with, as it happens, volcanoes erupting and a new monster comes out, which is Gaios, he's a bit like Rodan from the Godzilla series. This huge pterodactyl looking guy, except he's got a lot of influence from bats as well. He uses sonic beams as his weapon, and he only comes out at night. He's a very good villain, actually. They instantly set him up really well as showing off his powers compared to Gamera's. So yeah, these volcanoes are erupting all over Japan, and I was really worried at the start of this film because there seemed to be a lot of drama about roadworks. There's a lot of Japanese people arguing because like, oh, these volcanoes are disrupting our plan to build an expressway. And that, luckily, isn't a huge focus, but it turns out that's the B plot that gives the film its kind of human dynamic. They're just like very obsessed with this roadwork. So yeah, and what's nice is I think in the intro I was complaining because I'd watched Godzilla vs. Kong, and the two of them don't meet until the final half hour of that 90-minute movie. Gamera versus Gaios, they meet 20 minutes in. Beautiful. That's how all these things should be planned. And it's great because this film follows like the Rocky 3 structure, which is, again, more films should, where they meet and Gaios really hurts Gamera because his laser beam can cut Gamera's skin. And Gamera almost loses an arm. He's bleeding out everywhere. Then we got a brilliant bit where Gamera pops into his shell and just flies at Gaios, which just sets up the fact that Gaios' laser beam cannot pierce the shell, which is important because this all lets you know what their pros and cons are. It's very good. It's very good visual storytelling. And then he sets Gaios on fire for a minute, which is always cool, and saves a child from being killed by Gaios, who eats people, which is very inefficient. There's a lot of scenes you see Gaios, who's I think 250 feet tall, holding one human in his claw and eating them. And you can't imagine that's getting him very far nutritionally. Like, that's not going to keep him going, right?
Oh, it's basically the equivalent of Skittles for a kaiju, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but then I wanted to see him pick up multiple people and be like throwing them down like Skittle. Be just like one child. It's not much point. But Gamera, being a friend of all children, saves the little boy. And there's a beautiful scene of Gamera flying through the sky with a child on his back. Oh, there's so many great images in this film.
Sounds like never-ending story or something.
Yeah. So then we, a bit like your film Die, we do get a lot of scenes of scientists discussing the monsters. But it's never boring, because everything that happens is so mad that them trying to react to these things is actually quite interesting. Even the fake science is very fun. And it's got the problem of children running into these super secret meetings, because Aichi, the child who saved earlier, somehow becomes the Gamera expert by virtue of being the only one who seems to pay attention to what's happening in the film. And yeah, with the expressway subplot, there's a nice thing of you see how these giant monsters fighting through Japan is affecting people on a smaller scale. Like, there's a bit of like how agriculture is destroyed because Gaios is in the area, so all the cows have run away. So there's a bit of milk politics in there. People are worried about employment, as you were. No one's ever worried about dying specifically from monsters as they should be, as much as like all the stuff around it. But this is the third Gamera movie, so maybe they've just quite used to him.
Just like a specific siren for like kaiju attack, where they're just like, oh, okay,
Yeah. Because in the first film, Gamera is a bit like Godzilla. He's more of like a straightforward villain, though not quite as vindictive. Maybe he does just want to eat like nuclear power, because the first film is very much about the Cold War. There's a lot of discussion of that, and in the end they solve the problem by having East and West work together, which is all well and good. I believe in that, I should say. So yeah, and so they figure out with like the kind of bat analogy that Gaios' weakness is light, and that's why he only comes out at night. He doesn't come out during the day. Oh yeah, sorry. So Gaios and Gamera have another fight after they learn this, where their plan is to try and keep Gaios out until the sun comes up to weaken him. So Gamera comes again. They have the titular giant monster dogfight, but Gaios is flying, and so is Gamera. And it's very excellent. And yeah, in this fight, Gamera bites off like a few of Gaios' toes, which is so brutal. Like these films, I think, the Gamera series, from what I can tell, are not afraid to get their hands dirty. A bit more than the Godzilla ones, which are a bit more slap and tickle. I mean, the early Godzilla films are like the equivalent time period. So these toes are... it's just a funny sentence to say, sorry. These giant weird toes are floating in like the Tokyo harbor. And they're discovered by dock workers in the morning. And they see that when the sun is coming up, the toes are shrinking. And they're like, oh, so that is what happens. The sun, it's like reverse Superman. The sun takes away his powers. So if we keep him out long enough, he will also become weaker. So Gamera will have a better chance of fighting him. And so they create synthetic blood to lure Gaios in, because he eats humans, to try and trap him on this giant pole until the sun comes up. And that doesn't work. So instead they realise they've got to... This is when it gets a bit strange, because before this, Gamera is always just showing up. And then they have this problem of, oh, we really need Gamera in this specific place. So we need to figure out a way how to call him, pretty much. Like, because they don't have a bat signal for Gamera. But they should. So they set a giant pyre. They light up a giant pyre on top of a mountain to get Gamera there. Gaios tries to extinguish it with his giant wings, which is cool because it shows that he's quite intelligent and he knows that they're pretty much calling his least favourite person to the party. But anyway, Gamera does show up, and there's some glorious scenes of Gamera like absolutely destroying Gaios. And he's somehow learned how to dodge the lasers, including like popping his head into his shell when it's about to hit him. So this is a 200-foot tall monster who's fast enough to dodge something that's moving at the speed of light, which is as Martin Scorsese would say, cinema. Finally, there's a beautiful moment. It's like Gamera's on the ground from that. He's like on his last ropes, and Gaios is charging up a laser to shoot at him. Then Gamera just picks up a boulder and flakes it into his mouth, and he's just got a boulder stuck in his face. So then Gamera grabs onto him and flies into the air and drops him into a volcano. And that is how Gamera defeated Gaios. And all the Japanese people watching it they literally say something like, yay, now we can finish the expressway. after seeing a giant turtle kill a pterodactyl, that they just think about roadworks.
There's so many of these giant monsters, it's mundane now, you know.
Yeah.
More concerned about how you get to work.
And Dave, I know you mentioned your credit music. Mine, I learned Gamera has a theme song sung by children describing Gamera.
I kind of thought they would. That's why I mentioned Totoro as well. Is the kind of, I was imagining something like that as he's flying around.
It's very funny at the end of a 85-minute film to have a song at the end to describe to you who the person was you were just watching for that whole film. I think that's all I have to say on it. I should just say, like, I love these. I love Gamera. I didn't expect to come onto the show and find true love, but it's happened.
Just going through Tinder and just seeing this giant turtle, like, oh, that's the difference. It does sound like there's a lot more going on in your film, though, like compared especially to Me and Dai, in which they're like, right, and this happens, and some scientists are chasing that, and then that happens. It's not like they're trying. They're like, oh, you know, and let's get some blood. Oh, we can see that this is like reacted to that. And so it sounds like there's a bit more science, there's a bit more engagement, there's a bit more of a plan and an idea, a bit more reaction, not just you know, everything in the film is reactionary to the things that are happening. It's kind of like progressing its own plot.
Yeah, everything is like, what's the South Park thing they say in writing? Everything should be like therefore or but, and not just and now and this and this and this. There's a cause and effect for like all these fights. Like the only duff bits are like there's some bits of people just talking just about their own problems. It's like, but where's Gamera?
The whole expressway thing reminds me again of that Godzilla Raids Again, which is the sequel to the original, where that is just like they focus so much on this like fishery, this like factory, and like so like the characters of that. And I was like, why are we focusing so much on this? And I was like, okay, I suppose, you know, they kind of want like a down to earth, so like understandable link, like, you know, personal relationship for the audience to link to, especially in Japan, because they're like, yes, you know, their transport is a massive thing for them, their fisheries, so all of that makes sense. So I suppose it kind of links into that again with Japanese culture, like the important aspects of their culture.
Yeah, it's creating sort of actual peril, like something that you might lose, you know, and also in terms of putting a human story in, so that you get the sense of that if the monster runs riot, then we will lose something, rather than like in the one I watched, if Megaguirus runs rampant, then I don't know what's going to happen. He'll probably just fly off into the sea or something. It's not really like, I don't care. But in yours, it sounds like the monster's actually going to cause some damage.
Yeah, like it's an actual villain kind of thing. It's like...
Yeah, because I realised during it, it's kind of a very strange vampire movie. Because Gaios has all these attributes and he's feeding off people. Whereas Gamera just eats fire, which is fine, you know. He lives by a volcano now.
Is he actually, like I said earlier with the Godzilla thing, is it that he's played as a kind of hero? Like everyone's like, please, Gamera, come help us. Or is it that people are like, we need to stop Gamera? You know, is it that he's like a nuisance? Or...
Well, I should have said, actually, sorry, I missed this at the start when you see volcanoes erupting at the very beginning. These Japanese people are watching the volcano, and then they go, oh, look, it's Gamera. And he comes flying in, and it's very much like the start of a Superman movie. It's like, Superman. Except Gamera can't stop a volcano. He's just coming there to feed. But they all seem like, especially after the first one, where they have a much more antagonistic relationship with him. Though he does save children in the first one. I don't know what the reasoning is, why he's so connected to children specifically, but Gamera's an alright dude. That's what the impression I've gotten. And I would die for him. He's like the Japanese, like Barney, just like a lot more like ferocious looking. I think that is Totoro. But like Godzilla, he's also one that is gone on for several generations, isn't it? So whereas this is kind of like 1967, he's like also lapsed into the like the 90s and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I believe his last film was 2006, which was meant to be a kind of reboot that was critically well received, but it didn't do well commercially. So I do wonder if these new MonsterVerse films do well consistently, would they maybe try to finally get Gamera in? Because the problem is Western audiences wouldn't be as familiar with him because his stuff I don't think has been localized as much. I think Mystery Science Theater is the most exposure they've gotten. Yeah. But maybe that fan base is big enough. I don't know. Yeah, I kind of want to see it happen now. I've become that person. I hate it.
So we now go to the world of horror in terms of Craig, who has the strange creatures of was it The Ring and
The Grudge.
The Grudge.
Yeah, so full transparency, I have never seen any of the films from either of The Ring or The Grudge series, so I genuinely did not know what to expect. Obviously, I know of like the basic lore of both of those franchises. One is there is a videotape which, if you watch it, you'll die within a couple of days because of a freaky chick with long black hair. That's all I can describe it as. And the other one is basically your typical: if you enter this haunted house, this creature will kill you by dragging you into a dark space. And there's another creature that'll like snap your neck for no reason. So 2 primed horror Japanese characters. And my big question going into this film was literally, how are they going to make them fight? So going into the film and actually starting off, I'm as somebody who doesn't like horror, I actually think they did a really good job at establishing this film. Essentially, what it is the tape is resurfaced because of what I can only describe as the dumbest tech assistant I've ever seen in like a pawn shop. Because literally, she was just like, "Oh yeah, these 2 people need to buy a VHS player in order to do something with like a wedding video. I think putting it onto DVD, whatever." I also found this old tape. I watched it. It looked a bit weird, but I just put it in the VHS player and sold it to these people. I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with you, you moron? Like, bear in mind as well, part of the thing with like The Ring is that once you've watched the film, you then get a phone call with these like really freaky noises. Apparently, she also had that, but shrugged it off. She even says, "Oh, it might have been that cursed tape everyone's talking about. I'm probably gonna die soon," and then goes up to the top of like a building and jumps off it. I'm like, "What's wrong with you, you dumb?" Anyway, so these 2 girls, one of them ends up watching the tape, while the other one managed to like look away in time, so couldn't get the effects of it, right? By accident. So the large plot of the beginning of the film is them trying to work out, okay, this is really the cursed tape. How can we stop this from happening, right? And I actually think that they do a lot of sensible things. They go and visit this professor who's been talking about Japanese folklore, and he's also obsessed with wanting to meet the creature from The Ring, so Sadako. He's literally obsessed to the point that he says, we have the original tape. He says, "I want to watch the tape." Sorry, you want to watch this video that's going to kill... He's like, if it means I meet Sadako, I'm willing to die in 2 days. Okay. So he tells them to leave the office. He watches the tape. He's freaked out. He gets the phone call. He's freaked out. Like, they come back and he's still freaked out. And then he goes, "That was it. That's the original. Oh, that was amazing." I'm like, "Oh, you deserve to die, you moron." Like, for God's sake.
Well, he feels he deserves to die as well, apparently.
Like, I'm just like, why on earth are you doing it? Like, how are you meant to be like this professor who's like, you know, proven the existence of Sadako if you know you have now 2 days to secure your legacy? They end up basically going to I don't really know what you sort of like a channeler, I guess. You know, the people who try to use like the talismans and those sort of spells to try and exorcise people. That doesn't work, and Sadako ends up killing all of the like channelers at this place, leaving just these 2 girls alive. Well, you'll probably notice throughout all my explanations of this is I haven't mentioned the Grudge at all, because I figured it's fair to say that the creature from the Grudge, Kayako, really doesn't factor into this film at all for the vast majority of it. The only time we see them is that a new family end up arriving into this neighborhood, and they see some kids outside this haunted house, and one of this group of kids are bullying this one other kid, and they force him to go into this house. He does. He freaks out because, you know, there are 2 demonic beings in there. One of them sounds like a cat. The other one that sounds like somebody just like the most ungodly noises I can describe of just like just but like full volume and then obviously kills all of the children. But bear in mind as well, this kid was also trying to use these demons to kill the bullies. And there's just this weird thing going on with this film where they're just like, everyone is just treating these folklores like an absolute joke, and even trying to like benefit themselves from it, right? So, you know, like there's such a nonchalant nature to it, and it's actually quite refreshing to the point that everyone's just like, I just don't care, or I'm positively invested in it. And I was genuinely enjoying the film, like going in. I didn't think it wasn't really a versus film, but it was just this world where horror's going on, and it was just a weird look at just like, I don't know whether it's just because I've been living in a society where there's been massive overarching threats that some people just don't seem to have cared about, that I seem sort of appealing about this film and the fact that those people then suffer. But and basically it gets to the point where it's close to the one girl now getting close to her death date. And they read this thing, which is, oh, if you pass on the tape to someone else and make them watch it, the curse is then transferred away from you onto them. What if you give me the tape, I then watch it, that basically resets us, we now have 2 days to think of something? And I was like, okay, this is interesting, the ways you're trying to get around this. Here's where things get weird, and like a bad sort of weird. So the one girl, Yuri's basically our main character, has now watched the the video, and the phone calls come through. Then this guy and his blind psychic assistant 10-year-old girl storm into the room, grab the phone, and smash it on the floor. And he's like an advanced channeler who got summoned, apparently, because every now and then he's there going like, he's just casting these weird like hand spells, and just over and over and over again, and then they're just like, right, we have this grand solution. What we're gonna do to get rid of Sadako, which means that you can live, we're gonna get her to fight Kayako. So they literally say, these two plots haven't interacted at all in any way until this one random dude in like a long black coat literally goes, he literally is the equivalent of somebody just going like, I want to make these characters fight. Because that's the only way in which that happened. His grand plan is, for some reason, he knows where the house where like Kayako is. He just knows for some reason. He's like, okay, what we're going to do is, you are now afflicted with this curse. We're going to get you to walk into that house where you'll be afflicted by a second curse. Hopefully, the two ghosts will fight over who gets to kill you. And hopefully they'll just kill each other in the process. And coincidentally, when they go over there to enact the plan, another girl that we briefly meet as well in the Grudge plot of like the school kids, her family's just been killed by Kayako in the sort of like, you know, dragged into the shadows, neck snap approach sort of way. And he's go, this is great. What we'll do is when we send her into the house, we're going to send you into the house as well, so you can watch the video. So you will also be afflicted by two curses. So hopefully, if they don't fight over her, they'll fight over you as well.
Oh, God. We need to have a backup just in case.
At this point, literally everyone's just watching this video, right? I've watched this video for about 5 separate times in this film at this point. Also, for some reason, I don't know why, but the first girl who dies, I think her name is like Natsumi, she randomly uploads the VHS onto DVD and then posts the video on YouTube.
Oh, God.
So now everyone is watching this video and is getting ready to die. And I was just like, why did you upload it to YouTube? She was just like, I think it suggested that she's possessed, but nothing. And then she decides she's going to kill herself before Sadako can do it. Unfortunately, the time she chooses to kill herself, Sadako walks in and hangs her. So then we get to like the moment we've been waiting for. the moment where these two girls are going to walk into the house of Kayako and watch the Ring video, and now we're going to watch the ghosts fight. Do we actually think we're going to watch the ghosts fight?
Bloody hope so.
I just don't know how they would, but okay. like cosmic entities or something. Like, here's some darkness thrown at you or something.
To be fair, the beginning of the actual fight, the atmosphere, is pretty damn good. Because they do a lot of subversion things with it, right? So they're in this house now. They've just watched the video. The phone calls just come in and they answered it. The phone stops ringing and you don't hear any of the weird atmospheric sounds that everyone else has been hearing. And everyone's like, that's weird that the phone call cut off. Something's going on. Which is just like, ooh, conflict. Here we go. Then Toshi, I think it's Toshi, basically the little cat, blue cat sounding thing, which like serves Kayako, appears in the corner of the room. Sadako comes out of the video, drags him into the video. So he's supposedly gone. Fight 1 over. Fight 2, Sadako now arrives, and Kayako then comes down, and it's like a convulging sort of like weirdly moving creature doing like those weird noises I said earlier. Sadako comes out of the video. Kayako grabs it, drags her into the dark. Fight 2 over. They then both somehow reappear again, at which point Sadako uses her hair to like pierce the eye of Kayako and then blow her up. But still, they're both still alive, so they're doing a couple of things like this to each other. So it's not really fighting, it's just, I'm going to do what I would usually do to kill a person just on you. Oh, wait, you're still alive. And then this guy in the black coat, Kaizo, he then rings him saying, my plan has horribly failed. You must get out of there now. I was like, great plan, mate. And then he said, don't worry, I've got a backup. His backup plan...
Get a third person cursed.
Oh, it's slightly worse than that. There's this massive well outside of this house. And he goes, and he's been putting up like posts around it.
So like, there's a well which is inhabited by another ghost called Kimiko, and if we curse you with that, then Kimiko might come out and fight them.
What happens is even dumber. They run out to him, and he says, I'm really sorry, one of you is going to have to sacrifice yourselves.
Oh, God.
So literally, his idea is he's going to get one of them to stand over the well. The idea is the two ghosts will then rush towards the well. The person will go down the well. They will both go down, kill her, but then they'll put like a talisman sealing thing over the top of the well.
Right.
So Yuri, the one who is in the Ring storyline, offers to do it because she's quite altruistic. She does. The two ghosts come rushing towards her at the same time. She jumps into the well. They collide into each other and fuse. So now there's just this massive spiraling mess of hair, flesh, and blood. Now coming right down the well towards Yuri. She's about to die. They put this massive... It literally looks like a dream catcher. It looks like a massive dream catcher. And they just put over it. That explodes. So that hasn't worked. Kaizo then flies off and we never see him again. He's presumed dead. The two ghosts have now merged properly into an actual creature, which literally looks like a horrendous fusion of the two of them, called Sadako. Has both the noises of like the screeching from the Ring and the groans from the Grudge. Lunge at the remaining alive characters. Credits.
Huh.
Again, it sounds like we mentioned Digimon earlier. It's like Sadako and Kayako DNA digivolve into Sadakayako.
I just imagine a Dragon Ball Z in the fusion dance. But it's just
nice ending, really. Quite hopeful, they learn to get on at the end.
I was going to say, I think I had the one versus film where literally, because I joked throughout the film, I was just like, I will laugh if it gets to the end of the film and instead of fighting, they just look at each other. It's like, want to kill these guys together? I just high five. They basically do.
Does anything come of the whole it being on YouTube thing?
No. Well, I mean, probably. Probably we just never see it.
Yeah. Now there's two evil entities killing everyone.
Well, a third evil entity would be introduced there, which would be YouTube's copyright claim. To be like, hey, you can't put that up here. That's from The Ring.
What I would have thought. So the reason I thought they were going to do it is because, bear in mind, they're going into part of their plan is they're going to go into a haunted house to watch the video from The Ring, right? I thought the reason that they put in a plot line that this video is now on YouTube was not only to sort of increase the tension of we have to destroy this demon, otherwise everyone's going to die, but also have an explainable reason as to how they're going to easily watch the video from The Ring in this house. Because I was just like, oh yeah, because otherwise you're going to have to lug in a massive power supply VHS player and an old TV to watch it on.
Yeah.
As opposed to just watching it on a mobile phone or a laptop. That's why they did it. Nope. They literally rolled in a massive power supply VHS player and an old TV.
If they did want to do the mobile route, like private that shit, like, oh, whoops, I put it on public, like, damn it, But
the thing is, the film had such potential. I just think that they needed to actually bring in a more, because I think the idea of somebody being afflicted by two curses and having those demons fight over, possession of their soul or whatever, I think is actually a really interesting concept. It's not a concept which is in any way explored in a natural way throughout this film, right? You could literally have a story where, say, like a group of friends want to have the most Halloween-y experience possible, and they do all those things that loser channeler basically just got them to. Also, no idea where he found this blind psychic 10-year-old girl and why and what they're even doing. It's said that they're paid to be there, but I'm just like, what makes you so how? What are you? What are you? What are you doing here? So I thought there was a lot of potential to this film, especially once I actually learned what the plot was. Such just stupidity in the finale, and just when you actually see the monster as well, the actual flesh sort of chaos version of it, it's just so awful. It's just. But I just don't like horror films, especially when ones that present itself as this going to be this sort of the versus sort of aspect. I just don't like the idea they built it up like that, and it just wasn't a winner.
Yeah,
I just feel a bit robbed.
It didn't sound like there was a whole lot of real fighting between them either.
Yeah, it was just
they didn't really have a showdown.
They were just using their powers.
And the fact that we had that in the Shark film as well, it kind of just relates back to if you want these versus fighting films, you do have to go to the kaiju monster stuff. Just people at least there are winners in both of those scenarios, So both of the films we mentioned, at least, Godzilla won, that one, and Gamera won that one, whereas in the other two.
It's like the equivalent of, say, if David and I got in a fight and all it was just, I slapped him, he went away for a couple of minutes, he came back, slapped me, I went away, we then came back, then joined hands and punched some other dude.
As soon as lockdown's over, we'll make that happen. That sounds like an event.
It does sound, Craig's description as well, like a massive hair and everything. That could be our combined version.
But I'll give it credit that I found a lot of it creepy, and also I think it was I think as a horror film, it probably was a fairly good horror film insofar as it didn't rely on cheap horror. There weren't any jump scares. All of it was just genuinely intimidating, which is the sort of horror, if I'm ever going to watch, is what I actually prefer watching. So I think that's why I was able to actually enjoy a lot of this film. It just wasn't a versus film.
Interesting. So yeah, we've got to We delved into some interesting factions of what is a versus film, and like what do you expect from it. I like it. So it'll be interesting discussing in our section today as we've gone through so many different films, and especially because we've randomly picked all of these films as we discuss them in this week's Movie Vault.
No, screw that. It's Endgame time.
We're in the endgame now.
It's so annoying.
Okay, welcome to the Versus v Versus special. So obviously, in the spirit of the type of films that we're talking about today, we thought instead of choosing a movie for the Movie Vault to be preserved for all time, we should let them fight it out. So what's going to happen is we're going to divide ourselves up into brackets, and essentially we're going to argue our case for why our film should be in the Film Vault over the other film that we're arguing against. Basically, the winner will be the winner of each argument will be decided by the two other guests listening. This will be done on the quality of your argumentation alone. So this can't be based on anything you've previously said in the episode. It can't be based on which film you think would be worse than your own, therefore you winning the later argument. It needs to be on how well you think they've argued it.
Niall just shows a picture of Gamira and we're like, oh, Niall gets the point.
So what we'll do to decide this is that on my screen, David is in my top left. So David will be 1. I'm in the top right. I will be 2. Niall, bottom left, is 3. Dai, bottom right, 4. So I'm going to roll a dice to decide who is arguing against who. Are we ready? And like promised, regardless of the quality of the film overall, whoever wins this endgame has their film in the Film Vault, Movie Vault. Number 4. So Dai, you will be arguing against 2. Me.
Oh.
Right.
So we will have a minute each. Dai, as the guest, you can decide, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first, I think.
Okay. David, could you time us?
Ready, Dai?
I'm ready.
And go.
Right. I'm not going to argue that my film is the best film here. In fact, it might be the worst. What I am going to argue is that without my film, none of your films would exist. This is Godzilla. He is the original versus character. And this movie has all of the Godzilla things in it. It's got a bit of nuclear terror. It's got a bit of slapstick and campiness as people in rubber suits punch each other. It's got everything. He fires laser beams out of his mouth. He bites off a stinger. He does everything. And so really, for anybody who is going into the Film Vault to watch a movie, none of them make any sense without having seen Godzilla versus Grudge, whatever his name is, first. So that's why this movie has to go in, because none of the other movies make sense without it. Complete argument done.
3, 2, 1. Yay. So now on to Craig's argument. So you ready, Craig?
Yep, I'm ready.
Starting now.
So Sadako versus Kayako, I think, deserves a place in the Film Vault for a couple of reasons. One, I think it is a genuinely good horror film, taking 2 incredibly strong franchises and managed to merge them together in a way which is incredibly compelling. I think whenever you have a versus, I think that often they take characters we don't care about and pit them up against each other. Here you have an entire franchise basically fueling the success of both of these characters, bringing them together. And I think that the ways in which they interact are incredibly menacing and have an incredibly powerful horror feeling. Second of all, I think that the production's values, being a 2016 film over, say, other films which might just not look as good because of the idea of, say, rubber suit feeling, necessarily puts it ahead in that regard. And I think there's a degree to which audiences will just get involved in this, and I think it has little setup needed in order for you to enjoy this film.
And that's time. So we've had Dai and Craig's arguments there. Niall, what's your thoughts? It's down to us.
Based off argument alone, I'm going to have to go with Craig. Dai, it was a gamble saying that your film was the worst here. I think you may have to be honest. I think you may have undersold it a bit in that regard, but no, both very well spoken. But Craig, especially because we know Craig doesn't like horror specifically, it was very well argued.
Yeah, I think as well, I appreciated Dai's approach that you couldn't be here without Godzilla, but then it's hard to argue that for a film from like 2000. So I was a bit like, I don't know.
Get away. No one would. Nope. So
yeah. Also, the fact that you couldn't remember the name of your film.
It's such a convoluted name of the villain.
Oh no, I get it.
I'd go with Craig.
So in that case, going through to the next round is Sadako versus Kayako. Oh yeah, also to reiterate, the two films that go up against each other at the end will have to be different arguments.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have Niall versus David. So Niall, as the guest, you get to choose. Would you like to go first or second?
I will go second.
Okay, so David, are you ready?
Yeah.
Your time starts now.
So we talked a lot about how there are loads of like bad shark movies, and while you could like there's loads out there and you know they're all inspired from Jaws, I think obviously if Jaws is there in the movie vault, then you kind of have to reflect like the bad shark movies. And while you could have sequels to Jaws, you also need those like random versus ones. And while there's loads of others that could go in there, and like things like Sharknado, I think we should all like agree that fate has chosen this film. We chose it out of like a cup amongst like loads of other versus movies, so fate was on this film's side. And you know, again, with Mecca Shark, like it's literally got two sharks in the title. It's not distracting us about other sea creatures. It's like, no, shark movies are bad, so here's two sharks, but one is slightly different, and it links back to the whole Mecca Godzilla aspect of it. And it's just like the really bad shoddy aspects of it, the stupid effects, the crappy acting, the stupid storylines. It's just a fun watch, and you need that kind of crappy, shoddy direct-to-DVD film in the movie vault.
Okay, wonderful. Niall, are you ready?
I am ready.
And your time starts now.
So kaiju films are the definitive genre for versus films, and yet Godzilla's outings have never been that interesting, really. They've always been rather boring affairs, to be honest. Gamera, however, the unsung hero of Japanese cinema, has come, and it's a perfect introduction seeing him in giant monster dogfight, because you're introduced not only to him, if you're new to it, but Gaios, who's an excellent villain. And as you see the two of them battle with their own weaknesses, their own strengths, you really get a sense of the scale of this conflict. And the fact it always reminds you what's at stake in regards to the human characters. This isn't just a versus movie. This is a great movie, full stop. No excuses, and a perfect representation of the genre, all things considered. And just a beautiful, beautiful film craftsmanship. Go watch it.
3, 2, 1. Okay. So those were both the arguments. Dai, what do you think?
Well, I appreciate David's argument that fate has chosen this movie. I think I can pick up in David's argument kind of similar lines to what my argument was, which is admitting that the movie is not actually good, but we should probably try to see it anyway. So yeah, I think Niall's argument stands up because you actually justify the movie as being a genuinely good movie. And so yeah, I think that one has to hold up because you described it, rather than describing a movie that is good only if you like bad movies, you've described a movie which is good even if you like good movies. So yeah, I think Niall's argument for Gamera has to go ahead.
Yeah, I also just think on very simple terms, I think Niall just spent more of his time talking specifically about the film. I think as much as I love setup in arguments, and I think David did a very good job of sort of premising a lot of what he wanted to talk about. When you only have a minute, I think you spent too much trying to talk about, grand terms such as just, we could be talking about Jaws or any of the delineations of Jaws or Sharknado. I think it didn't give you much time to talk about that. Well, I think Niall was able to do it more succinctly, and then was able to explain to us in more detail about why specifically his film just had genuinely good quality. So I'm voting for Niall. So congratulations, Niall.
He's also arguing for a film which actually has the characters verse off. I was just like, I'm arguing for a film in which they don't even fight. What the hell do I have to hold on to? So again, I was like, I was just there with like a thread. Like, I'll just hold on to this.
So now we come to the final argument. Niall versus Craig. Again, Niall, as the guest, would you like to go first or second?
I think I'll go second just because I just spoke. So it kind of makes sense rather than me like trying to build off what I just said.
Okay, no worries.
You ready, Craig?
I'll try to be.
And go.
Sadako versus Kayako deserves to go in the movie vault. I think what it is able to do in terms of like horror, suspense, and how it actually makes characters fight against each other, but also just a beautiful subversion on the versus trope, right? We don't get many versus films where the outcome is literally these two characters who we thought we'd never see like together on screen together actually work together. I think even though there isn't necessarily fighting, I think that what they're able to do in terms of actually making these characters combine together for a greater entity, I think just produces a lot of possibilities for the film. And I think also just how it then leads to the conclusion of that film is even more terrifying than what a fight necessarily would be. So I think that it's taken all of the suspense that what we expected for a fight, but then was able to subvert it to make us even more horrified. I think is something that should be honored and respected by a position in the movie vault.
Perfect timing. Okay, so Niall, are you ready?
Yep.
And go.
In films, authenticity, there's nothing more important. And in so many of these versus films, what makes these characters special has to be betrayed or ignored just to get the plot going. And I think what's great about Gamera versus Gaios is it's the third film in this series. And so it's not like, oh, we have to do this just to make money. This was their genuine vision. They came up with an excellent villain who became the arch nemesis of this character. And seeing them battle their ups and downs, there's beautiful rhythm, there's a great pacing, and you never feel like this is a last-ditch effort. This is just a useless idea they have to make. This is a great movie, a great sequel to the original as well, and genuinely a great battle, which not many of these can say. Normally the battle is the most disappointing part, because that's what you paid to see, and usually it doesn't live up to it. Here, it's everything.
Just on time as well. So, down to me and Dai then, is it? Oh, I really, I don't know. They both brought up some great points. I liked Craig's angle with bringing them together. I thought that, obviously he had a tough fight on his hands considering at the start of it, especially in the first argument, I was kind of like, well, this is tough because Craig's already admitted that they don't fight. But then sort of used that to his advantage in quite an effective way. But I also like Niall used it in the sense of, these characters do fight and it's a really good fight. So
yeah, Craig really cleverly kind of brings up that it's a subverted concept, and that's really great. And he very eloquently argued that. But then Niall was able to argue his movie didn't need to subvert anything because it's just good as it is. And for me, his description, and this is kind of what I wanted out of all these movies really, is when he mentioned that how the fight is the central core of the movie, that all the action relates to the fight and the strengths and weaknesses of the characters, and that is the core to all action going through. That's one thing that from the sound of it, none of the rest of the movies do. I know in my movie, the fight was just a coincidental bit tacked on toward the end. The plot had nothing to do with it. And in your one, the fight, they didn't even fight. In Craig's one, they seem to be fighting one ghost and then there just happens to be another ghost. And so the way that, Craig, you describe the film conjures the idea that most of the movie has nothing to do with the versus aspect. And then at the end, they subvert the aspect that they didn't really deal with before. Whereas with the Gamera movie, the whole thing is purely focused and laser sharply about that battle between the two characters. And I think that makes it sound like a more successful Versus movie.
Yeah, like I said, it comes down. I think it does come down a lot to the argument, doesn't it? Because knowing what the films are about is definitely like Gamera is the stronger one there. But then I don't know if Niall came in a bit late with that kind of the fight was really good aspect. I liked how you brought up like the villain, but then saying about the third film, I was like, I don't know where this is going, because I was like, does it really like give them more creative liberty being at the third part of a franchise? I would think that would mean they would be more tied to like money and that kind of stuff. I'd imagine that the first film would be more creative free. So I don't know if he brought in the fight element of it a bit too late into the argument. That's my only worry. So yeah, you would go with Niall, you would say, and Zeo.
Yeah, I think so. I think he described a movie that is better, or he described a movie that is a purer, more quality version of a Versus movie. Yeah, I think you got up a good point. I think Niall, at the end of the day, even though Craig sort of sold the idea of the film, I don't think he sold it as like, this is the film, this is what this film is about. It just kind of talked about like, oh, isn't this film clever? Whereas Niall sort of said like, this is why this film is so famous, and brought up like, you know, like you said, oh, I want to go see that. Whereas, you know, the Sadako and Kayako was more sort of painted as, oh, isn't it interesting that it subverts it? Whereas, yeah, I think like you said, Niall sort of brought up the fact of like, this is why it's a quintessential Versus film. Yeah, Craig argued that his movie had a really good twist at the end, whereas Niall argued that his movie didn't need a really good twist because it was good all the way through.
Yeah, well also, and he just argued for the entire film basically, so like it's not so much like with Craig, it's like, oh yeah, the end's really good, whereas like Niall saying that the entire film is good. So yeah, I'm willing to go with Niall, because, you know, it just feels fitting, and I think he argued well for it.
Passion came through.
Gamera is an amazing monster as well. He's a giant tortoise who flies and shoots jetpacks out of him. He's amazing.
So at the end of that, the winner of the end game is Niall.
Yay.
Congratulations.
That was a good fight. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, please tell the audience the name of the film going into the movie vaults this week.
Film going into the movie vault this week is Giant Monster Dogfight, Gamira versus Gaios.
I saw as well on Wiki, it says Giant Monster Mid-Air Battle, Gamira versus Gaios. Like, I love how, like, just, you know, to the point that is like they have a fight in the air. It's like, okay.
I was half tempted in one of my arguments to just say the name of the title again and let like 55 seconds pass.
Thank you, Niall, for sort of arguing for that so well. We've all had fun versing against each other to argue the points for all of our films and digging deep into what they are all about. Thank you, both Niall and Dai, for joining us. Obviously, we're talking about this because Godzilla vs. Kong is out in America at the moment, where people can watch it on HBO Max. We are yet to get a UK release date for it yet. Possibly by the time this episode comes out, there might be something, but who knows? So, guys, where are you going to be fighting people? Where can we catch you? Who are you going to be versing on your online matches? Niall, where can we catch you?
You can catch me on Twitter at Niall the Glyn. Contrary to what you just said, I don't fight many people on Twitter. I can't stay away from there.
Hey, you were banned for a reason, Niall.
I know. I was banned for promoting the podcast me and Dave are on, the Monday Lorians, a Star Wars discussion show that hopefully will be making a return in the near future. So I'm very excited for that. You can find my writings on feshshakehub.com. I've got a few WandaVision reviews for the last ones I did, so if you want to catch up with our coverage of that before the finale, oh well, no, it's already aired, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I'm not good with time. I'm sorry.
Spoiler.
Hey, go read them anyway. They're all great. And I'm doing some game reviews for Gamera, the Irish game site. That will hopefully have a new one up this week.
Awesome. And Dai, you're going to be fighting off Moby Dick. Is it apparently going to be whale hunting?
Is that what the kids
as
call
soon
it
as
now?
That was mentioned, it's all I can think about, and I've been subtly looking at different movies about Moby Dick while everyone else was talking. So if you want to find me, find a book of Moby Dick, and I'll be near it.
Yeah. you've transitioned from like King Arthur to like Moby Dick. It seems like quite a natural progression. So yeah, we look forward to like hearing what your findings are on that one. Do you think you'll be going back to the Godzilla franchise, or are you sort of Godzilla'd out from?
I'm certainly Godzilla'd out for now, and I haven't been that intrigued to see much more of it, to be honest.
If Dai sees a dragonfly flying around, he's going to get Vietnam flashbacks.
I'm going to bite its stinger off.
Anything lastly from yourself, Craig?
We've been talking a lot about versus films, and obviously we have a lot of versus films coming up, and I just want to give advice to anyone writing a versus film. I believe a wise philosopher once said in one of my favourite films from a couple of years ago, "Let them fight."
Indeed. So, and yeah, like you said, will there be winners in all of these versus ones? We don't know. It's interesting that so many films end without a winner. Or they just both die or something like that. So yeah, tell us at home your favorite versus movies. Are there any like good ones? Obviously we've come up with Gamera versus Gaios today. It's a fun time to be going back and looking through those old kaiju films. A lot of them, as Niall said earlier, you can catch on like Arrow and the Criterion collection have a lot of the old fashioned ones. And yeah, make a bigger petition to get some of the newer Godzilla films on there, because for some reason a lot of the 90s stuff is really hard to find in the UK. So yeah, bring them over here. You can catch us as well at freshtakehub.com/wellgoodmovies, which is our website, and you can also catch us on all the socials, Well Good Movies, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So please give us a like, a share, a review. It all helps us out, and please don't go versing us with any other podcasts. I'm sure that we could do that in the future, but for now, let's all play nice. So thank you once again for joining us today, guys, and yeah, go check out Gamera vs. Gaios and any of the other films we mentioned today which you think sound interesting. If you do want to go watch Mega Shark versus Mega Shark, be my guest, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.